Welcome in, everybody, to the In Off the Bench podcast. My name is Jim Cross. We got no DB today, but that's all right. We're going to keep it rocking. This episode is brought to you by Chinook Cedary, 8 flavors, wild and mild, the best in the game, less salt, no sandpaper tongue, Jesus One Apparel, empowering young men and women to be bold in their faith, John 16:33. And then, of course, the Bellsmith. I mean, Stone, these bells are elite. I got the only LSU one. I got one of 5 on the 2021 championship black. But that being said, Stone Simmons, man, how we doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well overdue. Somebody, man, I wanted to have you way back when. You obviously went through some adversity for a long time. Obviously had to get things going back in your way and in your favor. But we'll get into all that here shortly. Kind of want to break the ice a little bit first. You know, we had Hayden Schott on here. And he said, I like to be the best at everything. But unfortunately, he was only the second oldest player in college baseball. And there was a guy ahead of him, and that guy was you. So I got to ask, what's it like to be the old man of college baseball?
Yeah, I'm pretty old, man. I've got one older guy on my own team though. You got one thing wrong. It's Joe Powell. I think you know Joe, don't you?
Right.
Nobody knows it. Nobody knows it, but he's older than me. I always have to call him out for it whenever people call me the old guy.
I mean, you should have told Baseball America, because I didn't see his name on that list. They
don't know, man.
Hey, keep it under wraps, not a bad thing. But I got to ask. So there's 2 of y'all. So the question still pertains. Do they mess with you guys about being the old men?
Yes, they do. I get it all the time. They call me Grandpa. I got kind of a little receding hairline going. They always call me out for it. Yeah, man, but I love it. I've been around for a long time.
You got to just embrace it. I know, talking about Hayden, he has, and it's kind of funny, man. He wears the number 12 that they give to the 12th man. So the whole thing's worked out in his favor. And for you, a guy who's been able to be there for the national championship years and then be a part of the rebuilding process, you've earned your stripes. And the old man, it fits, man. But let's get into, where you're from. For those who don't know, where is it you're from?
So I'm from Houston, Texas. Grew up in Sugar Land, which is just south of Houston, and moved into inner city. And I've kind of moved around in the inner city, Houston. Love that place, man.
We have had a ton of guests. As a matter of fact, we had recently 3 that are at LSU that came from the Houston area. Man, big time hotbed for baseball. So I can only imagine, the kind of guys you played with was. Man, the talent unreal that you went against coming up.
Yeah, unbelievable. My senior year of high school, the championship game we were private school, so like I didn't even get the public school competition. But the senior year championship game was me versus Tanner Witt from Texas, and he's now with the Mets. And it was just a crazy one.
Where were they down that storyline in Omaha? I was there when y'all had to face him, and y'all faced him in Arlington, in Tech. Wow, like.
Yep.
You know what? We got to get better on this research stuff. College baseball is getting bigger and bigger. Stone, maybe they'll clear this stuff up, but that's pretty cool. So you've been dueling with dude, forever.
Oh yeah. I've been dueling with. Yeah, it's not just him, man. I can count him on. Probably take more than both my hands. So a lot of guys I've been dueling with.
Nice. Well, let's get into family, man. What's a family like? Got a big family? Got brothers, sisters?
No, I'm an only child. I've got 2 parents that I love. Introduced me to Jesus Christ, so got a great family background. My grandma went to Mississippi State, so that's sort of how that connection arose. I've got some cousins around here as well that live in Jackson, but no, it's just me and my parents.
Nice. Well, obviously they did a good job. You ultimately, not just as a baseball player, but you talked about your faith and somebody who's, had a lot of success. So shout out to them and the role that they've played in getting you to where you're at. But on the high school thing, you mentioned it earlier, and I saw, you got the most wins, strikeouts, like everything that you have for a high school team. You obviously won a state championship. So, man, obviously talked about the talent you got to play against, but it seemed like high school, man, it was a dream for you, man. Like, what was it like having so much success and, setting records at your school?
Yeah, that was so long ago. But I will say, like, I didn't really think much about it. I wasn't much of like a showcase kid. I wasn't a highly touted recruit or anything, but I knew I was a good ball player, knew I was a good pitcher. And every time I went out there and started a game, I fully believed that we were going to win the game. And that was some of the most fun I've ever had playing baseball. It definitely doesn't beat like the 21 national championship and all that kind of stuff. But man, that is sort of where my love for the game kind of came from, is growing up and just being on my own with my dad, training in the backyard, and getting to the point where I was actually a really good pitcher in high school, and then dominated my senior year and had a great season.
Yeah, and I mean, it's one of those things like, you're having fun because when you only lose twice on that bump and your whole high school career, like that's a lot of winning, that's a lot of fun. And it pays off. Obviously, you're going to go to college, but you don't start at Mississippi State for those who don't know. Obviously you started for him. Like, how does that come into play? Like, and I'll ask this: like, being where you're from, how much consideration was it to staying close to home or going far away?
Yeah, well, out of high school, I didn't really have much of an option. I was only really recruited by a couple of schools. Furman was the one that I felt like I could go there and play. At the time, they were D1. I think they're still D1 in other sports, but after my freshman year, they cut the baseball program, so we were all kind of forced to transfer if we wanted to continue our baseball career.
Was it due to they were one of the ones that was a victim to COVID, right?
Yeah, I think it was kind of misleading. It happened around COVID. I think that was probably the excuse. I don't know.
I say it may have been an excuse, but a lot of programs use different excuse then, because when you lose the money that comes in on sports for 1 year and they can start finding who to get rid of, it's going to be the one bringing in the least.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, 100%. And, it costs a lot to run a baseball team. So, I think some of us understood it. Some of us took it harder. It was easy for me to move on, with all due respect to Furman, because, as soon as I got in the transfer portal, I was getting calls from everywhere. I had the opportunity to start at Furman on Fridays as a freshman. And I think that had a lot of schools interested in me. A couple of the ones that were interested were Texas and Texas A&M. And of course, those are closer to home for me. So, I think it was pretty tough when I was in the portal, trying to make that decision. I had a ton of friends at A&M and Texas. And I didn't know a single person besides one of my teammates barely at Mississippi State. But I just felt called to state. Something about I had actually been to Mississippi State once before for an Egg Bowl, and I had heard the cowbells, and something about it, man. I just felt like I needed to go here.
And from a family aspect, you said your grandmother. I mean, that's got to be meaningful. That I'm sure she talked great about it.
Yeah. She did. And, she didn't actually graduate. So I really didn't even know that she went to state, and I knew that she had the connection. And I knew that some of my cousins had gone there, but I really wasn't as familiar with it as I probably should have been in order to commit. But Coach Lamonis at the time was the head coach, and he FaceTimed me, showed me around the facility, and I was like, man, I want to go here. So I just committed.
It helps. They're second to none. So like,
yeah, 100%. The best place.
I think we were just talking about it. I was talking about Monday's episode, and Lane Forsyth got to be lucky enough to go to both of them. And that was the reason I got put onto Oklahoma State. But Mississippi State to me is definitely number one. Oklahoma State number two, the closest one. But facilities that are just, I mean, it's unreal. And I can say that, Stone, because me and my son have toured most of them in person. So like, eyes on, and so I can say as somebody who's been through all of LSU's facilities as an LSU fan, they're not as nice. Like, people can hang it up. Like, Mississippi State is just elite, and it really is, as far as the stadium, is the mecca of college baseball. So when you talk about getting the opportunity to play there, like, to me, like, if I'm a guy like you, like, unless there was just some place that like had completely had my heart, which doesn't seem like was that place for you, like, that's where I'd want to go.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I don't know. I actually had this crazy story whenever I was at Furman. Real quick, I was sitting on the bench one day talking to one of my teammates, and I was like, man, I think Mississippi State's going to win the College World Series this year. And my teammate looks at me, and he's an older guy, and he's like, dude, you can't say that. We're competing to do that too, And I was like, okay, well, if it's not us, if it's not Furman, right, Mississippi State's going to win it. He's like, why do you say that? I was like, I don't know. I just got a feeling. And then next thing you know, I commit to State, and that's what we do. We win it.
I mean, go to Omaha 3 straight years is just, and honestly, they could have easily have won it the other ones. As obviously the Mangum team was so good. We've had so many of those guys, Elijah McNamee and Keegan James. Like, Mississippi State had a 3-year run that may have only had one championship, but when you look at dudes like that, those teams were it. But let's get into yours. So obviously the 2021 team, man, right out the gate, y'all faced some. I feel like it was just yesterday. Was there for the College Baseball Showdown with the 6 top 10 teams from the SEC
Yeah.
and the Big 12, and it gets off and running. And this Mississippi State team, everybody knew who they were, even though they had the one and only loss. In that weekend, I think everybody knew like this team was something. And that was the year we really got into this. Cameron James was our first guest, and then we had Hatcher, and then Landon, and kind of took off from there. And my son got all in on Mississippi State, and so we were going to a lot of games. And man, we just it was easy to fall in love with that team. Y'all had so many dudes. Obviously, Tanner Allen, Rowdy Jordan, Will Bednar. I was just talking with him, a little bit ago. So, like, just man, y'all had so many guys. So, how much fun? Like, obviously, we talk about the title, but when we talk about the guys on that team, I can only just imagine you being in that locker room your first year. What was it like, man, being a part of a team with those guys?
Yeah, a little intimidating for sure. I think especially like Tanner and Rowdy, you come in and those guys had been there for a while. And, I was this humble kid from Houston. I didn't know any of these guys. I just looked at them like, dang, Mississippi State, big time baseball players, and so that was sort of intimidating. But I lived with Will Bednar and Kite McDonald, who both of those guys should have been in my wedding. They both can't come, but I'm getting married in June, and, both of them had the groomsmen invite.
You're getting married during baseball season. What are you doing, man?
Oh, it's right after. I got like a week turnaround if we win the Natty. So, but anyways, I was living with Will and Kite, and man, I just really got to love those guys. And then, next thing you know, I'm really getting to know the rest of the team and starting to feel more comfortable in my own skin around the guys. And yeah, like you said, that was a freaking awesome group of guys. I loved that team. And, I've loved all the other teams as well, but that one obviously stands out, winning the Natty and everything. But some of the best guys that I've ever played with, and a lot of those who are playing pro ball right now and succeeding a lot.
Yeah. And something I wanted to talk about, going back through it, you had one tough game, but I want in the postseason that I want to bring up specifically because you may or may not know it, but we scheduled way out in advance. So when we scheduled Jack Brannigan from Notre Dame, we would have had no clue that they were going to beat Tennessee and he was going to be the hero that weekend. Yeah. So he comes on that Monday, but he specifically said the reason why they walked into Knoxville, weren't scared and won that series was playing in Starkville the year before. You know how electric that series was. You had to go against that lineup. Were you even the least bit surprised when you saw them the next year walk into Knoxville and win, and especially say it was because they played you guys in your environment?
No, 100%. We all were talking about that. It's funny you asked that. We talk all the time about how Notre Dame, we think we had one of the hardest routes to Omaha that season. Notre Dame was nasty. They could really swing it. They could pitch too, but that offense was unbelievable. Jack Brannigan was a beast. Nico Cavadas, oh my gosh, man, he hit that one ball.
My favorite was having we did our Pros and Joes Friends or Foes episode and had Logan Tanner messing with Landon Simmons about how far that ball traveled.
Yeah, Landon. Yeah, man.
If you're gonna give up a home run, which he never does, you might as well let it travel to another planet.
Might as well, man, because that ball was the farthest baseball I've ever seen hit.
And it was what they needed to happen on ESPN because I wasn't there. I was watching on TV. I watched every second of the series, and they were just hyping this guy up. They were literally calling him a Greek god, and as you know, he struggled the entire weekend, and then he gets that home run, and it's like, we told you.
Yeah, but you know what? Landon had that one pitch. It's like he had a freak fastball, and it's like 2-0 count, challenge fastball, and he got the best of them.
Four changeups. When they threw that stat out, he only threw 4 changeups on the entire season. That's crazy. I mean, talking about that Arlington weekend, I don't think he threw anything that wasn't a fastball, and he ran through that nobody out and bases loaded. He comes in just a straight heat.
Yeah, unbelievable against Texas. That was awesome, man.
Which, you talked about the road. Y'all having to play Texas again in Omaha, like on that side. Like Vandy definitely had the easier side. And obviously then there was the whole NC State thing. But like Texas, to me, y'all in Texas were 1 and 2. It kind of happened, in 23 also with LSU and Wake Forest. I feel like the 2 clear-cut best teams were on one side. And I think that year, Texas, the fact that y'all had to beat them multiple times, like you talked about Tanner Witt, that was definitely proof that y'all were the best team. And of course, there's a lot of people that get hung up on the NC State thing. Y'all had to beat Jack Leiter and Kumar Rocker. Like, I ain't trying to hear it.
Yeah, good. I'm glad we're on the same page with that. But with all due respect,
I mean, they're both. I know one of them. I forgot which. I think Jack got called up, right? And Kumar's like triple. Like they're right there. Like those dudes are elite.
Yep. They're both freaks, and they were tough to hit off of. That's for sure.
I love it. Cameron James, like I said, we started with him. He's like family. He got that home run in his opening AB against Leiter, and it was funny listening to him talk about it. Like, he still couldn't believe he did it, but he was like, I knew he was going fastball, and he's like, I was swinging fastball no matter what. And he made it sound easy to crush a 100-mile-an-hour fastball, but I guess it shows an elite hitter, if they can predict what you're doing and get a good swing on it, like that'll what happens. Unfortunately, that game, it kind of got lost because, right, that's the one that went sideways. But you ultimately win the national championship. How validating is that when you talked about Texas or Texas A&M and you chose Mississippi State, the school that you did chose, that you even predicted for that matter, like you went there and it happened?
Yeah, I think it was very validating for sure. But I to be honest with you, I think I got my validation earlier in the year. And it wasn't even on the field. It was just, I just got to the point where I felt like Starkville was home. Mm-hmm. And, whenever I hit that point, I don't have a date on it, but whenever that happened, I came to realize this is my place and I want to be here for as long as, God has me here. And that turned out to be a really long time.
Yeah, God had a funny sense of humor with you, didn't he?
Yeah, he sure did. Yeah, he's like, you're going to stay in Starkville for 5 years. So, but yeah, I that was my validation. And then the national championship was just, a dream come true for sure. I had no idea what that would have been like. And it was, if I would have guessed, it wouldn't have been nearly like what it was like. It surpassed anything I could ever imagine. So,
yeah. And I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up. We did an episode a few weeks ago, me, Tanner Allen, and Matt, the owner of Jesus One. And man, I don't know if you heard, so this is why I was asking, because you were talking about your faith and it being a strength. Tanner came on here, just was very open and said that while he may have been a good leader as a baseball leader, that he pretty much was lying about his faith. He did a lot of saying that he was a Christian, but didn't do any acting and or didn't do anything that acted or showed like a Christian, and was very apologetic for not using his platform the way he should have. And now that's why he's now going about it, and he's going to all these different schools and all these different things and right. Speaking. So I know that you would really appreciate that, because I didn't know how he was going to approach it. Like, I talked to him on the surface, but not tight like that. And I remember hearing the rumors while I was covering then, of him being a partier. And so it was just cool to see a guy like that be very humble, be open. And he even was not mad that baseball ended for him, right? He felt like the baseball player ultimately wasn't what he was called to be. So if you ever get a chance, or anybody listen to this episode, go back and check that out. Tanner and then Matt, speaking the vision behind Jesus One, which has been cool, man. You guys wearing those shirts post game, man, after a walk-off victory is everything we want, right? As guys with faith stone, you want to see people out there. How cool was that when you see those hanging up in the locker room, not just as someone who's a Christ follower, but man, seeing the team that's going to have a unity in this?
Yeah, it's sick, man. I absolutely love it. I wasn't expecting to walk into we had talked about it a little bit, so I knew that they were coming. But I got into the locker room and I saw Jesus One shirt in every locker, and I was like, man, this is awesome. And whether or not they get as much camera time as I wish they could, it's a good thing for us, because all 45, however many players we have, every single guy got one of those, and now they know, just even if it's just the name Jesus, they see it one more time, and I think that's.
Yeah, I mean, the vision behind it's a conversation starter, and so that's obviously what it'll do when these guys get them. And like you said, it opens the door opportunity, and even if it's not something that happens tomorrow, right? It's something that now there's going to obviously leave those wheels turning and whatnot. But it was really cool. Y'all are the third team that we've set up that's warm as a whole, and it just makes us excited to be a part of something. And I posted the picture yesterday, showed Michael O'Brien, because he was big in implementing the whole thing, but we were able to sell 2,400's worth of people who used I said it right. Yeah, I think 2,400 worth of people who used the in off the bench code, which led it to where we could give $400 to a local organization here in DeSoto County in North Mississippi. And basically it's $20 per backpack to fill it up with for students who come from impoverished homes. So that's obviously 20 students that get taken care of just by people buying t-shirts and getting that little percentage. So it's really cool that the college baseball players not only wearing the shirt, but being a part of something, and then fans buying it, feeling like they can be a part of something. But we're going to go from the positive to the negative side, because in order to get your story, we got to get to the injury. And my wife asked me before this episode, how is he as old as he is? And I said, well, major setback. So, talk about it. When you first get injured, man, I know how deflating it can be. What was the thought process like? And, obviously, if you want to touch on how your faith played a role, man, go for it.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people talk about, how hard it must have been for me and everything. And it was definitely hard at times, not to downplay that. But I think, I don't know, maybe just the way I'm wired is that, I got hurt and, I called my family and, I called the coaches and I was like, hey, tore my UCL. Can I get TJ? And, I understood that it was probably close to a 2-year recovery, year and a half recovery. And, I just thought to myself, like, all right, that's just what I got to do to keep playing, and I just kind of did it. And it was that simple at the time. It definitely got a lot harder and more complicated as I kept going. I had a really rocky rehab from the first Tommy John I had. The second surgery was not a Tommy John. It was I moved my nerve. They moved my nerve. But both of the injuries were real rocky when it comes to rehab. And that's what got really difficult for me, especially in my faith, is because, the verse, I had always stuck to is James chapter 1, verses 2 and 3 is consider adversity joy, for it'll produce perseverance. And, the whole time I was thinking, just find joy in this, And I was able to, a lot of days. And then there would be days that were so hard. And then there was another verse that started sticking out to me. Romans 8:28. It says, God will work all things together for the good of those who believe in him, or something along those lines. I'm probably butchering that, but
no, you're good. You're basically there. Hey, it's a certain translation, I'm sure, with all the different translations, you got to word for word.
Own translation. But anyways, I think whenever I sort of redirected my point of view to the second verse, where it's like, look, no matter what comes my way, it's not just adversity. It's every single thing that happens. God's going to work it all together, especially when you give it all to him. And the truth is I didn't really get to that point where I felt like I handed over baseball to him until this season. I struggled a little bit at the beginning of this season, and I know you're probably going to get here, but as a starter, I started early in the season, and I had 3 starts, and the third one was a little iffy. And the truth is, 2 of the 3 were iffy. And I was just dealing with some discomfort in my arm and stuff, and I finally was just like, man, like I'm tired of praying for health. I'm tired of praying for whatever I want, and I'm just going to let it go and say, God, I know that you're going to work everything for good, and that's the realization that has really given me a lot of peace. And now I'm feeling very comfortable where I'm at in my baseball career, whether it ends or not after this year. I love where I'm at, and I'm that's only because of my faith. So.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, not even as someone, because obviously not a Mississippi State fan, but as a college baseball fan, to watch you and Landon both go down, obviously just had the championship, but to see like there's so many expectations, not even just from a winning standpoint, but you guys in your future pro ball and everything. And so man, it was like all the vibes were gone. And so I can only imagine what it was like going through in y'all's heads. Right. And we've obviously talked to Landon on here a couple times since, but you ultimately, you go through the long patient rehab process. And one of the things that most people don't realize is you had the longer one, right? They don't realize there's 2 different kind of surgeries, 2 different kind of recovery processes. So the patient's even worse. I'll ask you this. We had Ty Floyd and Eric Raiselman on here talking about surgery, recovery, all that stuff. And they said one of the things as a baseball player you take for granted is just the ability to go out there and play catch, because when you can't throw a ball, man, everything's been taken away from you. That's what you know.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's really depressing, to be honest with you, especially when you're watching other people do it. You're on the bench and you're watching your team, play, and especially for me, I was watching my team struggle, to be honest with you, and I was like, man, I could be out there helping, and I just couldn't. I had it taken from me, but that drove my will to come back and play again. It kind of lit a fire under me a little bit, and now I'm back. I kind of pursued that will, and now I'm here.
So let me ask this: you get into this season, when you go to throw, is there any thought process in the back of your head about those injuries, or is it one of those things, especially because you were just talking about your faith, you're going to let it rip, and if something happens, it happens?
Yeah, I'm going to let the ball rip. And if I break my arm on the field in front of 15,000 people, I'll walk off the field and I'll come home to a really supportive family, a great fiance, and a God that loves me, and that gives me so much peace, and I never have to think to myself, hey, I just felt a shock down my arm. Do I stop throwing?
Mhm.
Obviously, if it hurts so bad, I need to stop. But
Right.
I don't need to be domed up about all the stuff that's going on in my arm. And I think a lot of people probably do have that problem where it's like their identity is fully in baseball, and if they have arm problems, that's a real big threat to them, in their identity. But for me, as soon as I found my identity in Jesus, I realized that arm problems were just part of the process, something I've got to deal with, a little bit of adversity, but no threat to my identity.
Yeah, and man, I'm excited to see you out there having success. Obviously, a couple rough outings this year, but way more good outings than bad. And as a matter of fact, when I was just looking at earlier, I think people found out after Auburn went to Tennessee this past weekend just how good that lineup is,
Wow.
that you had struggled with. But talk to me about the team right now, because y'all are hot, right? This is a team that a lot of people, and it's kind of interesting. 3 teams that people had wrote for dead in the SEC early are all 3 hot, man. And by my count, I said that I think all 4. I was gonna say all teams, but there's still the 2. There's still South Carolina and Missouri, but they're way out of it. But all 14 of the other teams, I think, make a regional at minimal. I think 13, but even crazier, Stone, is I think that there's going to be 13 teams with 13 or more wins, which is just insane, which shows the depth of this conference. There's nobody who's just like a powerhouse. Texas was kind of the closest. They kind of got humbled this past week, but like top to bottom, the SEC is just so good, so deep. And man, people are going to lose week in and week out. I tell people there's nothing wrong with your team if they lose in a weekend, especially, the ones on the road and some of these crazy environments. And so, man, I ask you, y'all do put back-to-back series wins together. Y'all are hot. Like, how's the team feeling right now?
The vibe is great. Obviously we've gone through a lot of adversity this season, just with losing and then losing our head coach. Obviously it's been really tough at times, and we've had a lot of kind of come to Jesus moments, where we went through stuff together as a team. And, but where we're at right now is we're finally able to play really loose. I think we kind of hit rock bottom a little bit, with them letting go of Coach Lamonis. It's like, well, we have nothing to lose now. Like, let's just go out there and play. And I feel like that's freed us up a lot. Our fan base has really come around us in the last week. We felt more supported than we've had all season for sure. So I think that's a really, really big thing, especially at Dudy Noble. Dudy Noble is, regardless, is the best facility in the country, I think. But without the fans, it's a little different. We signed up to play here because of the fan base, and now that we have the fans behind us, it feels like we're going to roll. Obviously we, like you said, we have the real big weekend coming up against Ole Miss. That's huge.
And that's where you learn what baseball means in Mississippi. I went there 2 years ago in Starkville, and that was when both teams were in the last 2 places in the SEC, and you set the attendance record, and you would have never known if you came in there and watched it, and not even just from the electricity of but the actual gameplay. Like, and you look at a lot of those guys, it kind of shows that how baseball happens, right? Teams can just go through rough patches because you look at guys, whether you're talking about Durangelo on the mound or obviously Dakota Jordan batting, like studs on both teams everywhere. But it just wasn't working out for one reason or another. But yeah, it just means more Mississippi. That's why I usually go to that series. This will actually be the first time that I haven't been in 5 years, and it's only because I have this disdain for Arkansas, and they'll be at LSU. But going and watching the battle for Mississippi, when they talk about the SEC means more, well, it means more. And now that both teams are good and playing for something this time around, I think y'all will probably set attendance record again while you're talking about the fans being behind you. I think it'll be as electric as ever. And if it goes the way I think it will with you guys winning, man, it's good. It's going to be one for the ages.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we need it. We can't go in there and treat them like some random opponent, and this is, I was on the team with Tanner Allen and Rowdy, and those guys hated Ole Miss, had a ton of respect for them, but respectfully hated them. And, and that's the mentality we have to have going into this weekend. It's personal. We want it to be our state, and so we need this series, and then we can hopefully. All I know is that at the end of the season, if we're a 3 seed in the regional, I know some team is going to be really pissed off that it's Mississippi State.
Well, that's why I have 5 SEC teams. I predicted. I said it, and I said I'll guarantee it, because go by the numbers that I gave you. Let's say there's 13, and to your point, 2 and 3 seeds all around everywhere. And you look at some of these teams that'll be hosting. Let's just use no knock on them, but like a UC Irvine, right? If Mississippi State, for instance, is a 3 seed in UC Irvine's region, they're coming out of it. You are coming out of it. Like, it is what it is. And so I think this is the year where people are going to be mad, just like in college basketball, where the whole NCAA bracket was nothing but SEC teams. It's going to be the same thing, and you're going to be taking regions everywhere. So you're right. And we talk about those hot teams. I would not want to look and see Mississippi State, Texas A&M, Florida, so it's really cool. And I'll say this, a fun story for you on the Ole Miss Mississippi State and that rivalry. You never, like me as somebody who's neutral, I don't want to be caught on the wrong side, but being, you guys and knowing all you and Cam and Tanner, Logan Tanner, and all those that were guests of the show already, I was wearing my Mississippi State hat at Ole Miss in 2022. And anyway, I'm walking around the corner and I see Elko and Leatherwood and their guests of the show, right? And so I take my hat and I throw it in the bushes. And it's funny because anybody who sees the picture can see that my hair is just like a crazy mess.
Yeah.
And anyway, it's like, because I was actually wearing a hat, but I tossed it in the bushes before they saw me. Didn't want them to know that I actually aligned on the other side in their stadium. So
I love it.
But man, let's get to this upcoming weekend. In general. What is your role? Do you know? I haven't got to watch Mississippi State as much. What have you been called on to do recently?
It just sort of depends. A lot of times, especially earlier in the season, I was coming in directly after Pico on Fridays. And man, I was having a lot of fun. I've had a little bit more struggles recently. I'm going to hopefully turn that around this weekend. I've been working hard and just ready to go. But I don't know what the role is. And especially as reliever, I know it's tough. Just kind of having an idea before the weekend actually starts. Maybe I'll know more when it's Saturday and Friday's game's already happened. But whatever it is, I'm ready for it, and I'm just pumped up to play them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, man, I wish y'all the best of luck, and man, I'm glad. Like I said, I haven't got to be there as much as I normally like to, but I have got to see you once this year live and in person, and I like just being able to see you healthy, and especially going all the way back to 2021, and just knowing how hard and how long you had to work and wait. And like I said, proud to be able to hear about your faith along the way. I gotta get the bell now. Like I told you, Bell Smith's going to send it to me, and hopefully, man, there's a postseason run involved. I can get out there, get my son, the actual resident Mississippi State fan, in the house to ring it. I can't withdraw the maroon from him, Stone. It's the craziest thing. Cam and the boys have been gone for a long time. Take him to LSU all the time. He'll wear the purple, but if you ask him, like even in Omaha in 2023 when LSU was winning, I was like, LSU or Mississippi State, and he was like, Hail State, and I was like, I mean, this same kid stiff Dylan Cruz outside. Do you remember in 2022 when Brooks Auger gave up the go-ahead home run to Dylan Cruz in the 9th on the Friday night?
Oh yeah.
So we meet with Dylan outside. I'm with his dad, and Dylan literally goes to extend a high five to my son, and he pulls back and says, Hail State. And I looked at him and I was like, that is Dylan Cruz. But, I got to respect it.
That's maroon blood. That's good stuff.
Yeah, it's been entered and it's not coming out. But with that, man, I told you we were going to play a game. We've got a new game we've been doing. We did it the first time the other day. Basically, you blind rank 5 right-handed pitchers I give you. There's really no wrong way to do this. It's just fun to see how it lines up. You down?
All right, let's do it.
All right, first we're going to start Roger Clemens.
Oh, man. I'm going to put him at 3. I feel like you've got a couple better ones in front of him, but man, you could make a case for him at 1.
Oh yeah, you definitely can. My host actually typed it on the thing. I'm not tech savvy like that, so I'm gonna have to write him in at 3. Anyway, all right, let's go. Greg Maddux.
Uh, man, he's debatably better, but I think I'm gonna put him at 4. This is hard. This is already hard, man. I'm 2 in. I'm gonna put him at 4. I think Nolan Ryan may be in there. I'm putting him 1. So
All right. Pedro Martinez.
okay. Shoot, man. I'm gonna put him at 2.
All right. Nolan Ryan.
Okay, 1. That's my 1. I like that.
And that worked out perfect for you because number 5 was going to be Stone Simmons.
Come on.
I was hoping once you said out loud that Nolan Ryan was going to be number 1, I was like, crap, because I was hoping you would keep leaving 1 open, thinking there was somebody coming. I probably, if I wanted to, I could have rigged the game and probably pulled Nolan off there. And because I pulled this from the makeshift project, and he does that to him. Actually, he'll do it and he'll set it up to where the last one is definitely one that he doesn't want at number 1 if he leaves it open. So, but you can't go wrong with any of those 5 guys. It worked out real well. Our other guest, his favorite left-handed pitcher of all time was Madison Bumgarner, and he ended up being number 5. So,
love it.
But I don't host it as good as my host. But I will ask you one more question, as a question we like to ask any of the guys who are upperclassmen who we know can handle thinking about this question. But it's a hypothetical. You're reading a book and you're going through it, and as you continue to read, you find out that this book is about your life, and you keep reading, and it gets all the way to the point of current day. Do you keep reading it or do you put it down?
Man, that's tough, but I'm putting it down. I don't want to know. I think that kind of goes back to me saying God works everything for good. I've got a lot of faith that my life's going to work out just fine. I don't really care to know.
Well, hold on. I'm gonna throw you a curveball. Then we'll see if you say it's. All right. So the book has been plenty of pages. You've read like 500 pages. So that's how it runs out the years, and then you realize there's only 3 pages left. We still done with the book.
Yeah, I'm done with it. Yeah, yeah, man.
Yeah, the faith thing definitely comes in there. I don't even want to know.
Yeah, that is bad though. If I saw that there's only 3 more pages, I already took something away from that.
No doubt. All right, Stone. Well, man, before you get out of here, obviously I plugged the Bellsmith. If y'all want to go get a Stone bell or any of the players' bells, you can go check them out or get your custom made. But outside of that, Stone, you got anything you want to plug or promote?
No, man. I appreciate you having me on. I just for all you viewers, come out and support us at Duty Noble if you're a State fan. So Hail State.
Yeah, I don't think y'all are gonna have any problem. Packed house. Y'all make sure to check out Ole Miss, Mississippi State this weekend. Pride is on the line, the state bragging rights, but ultimately for both these teams, man, setting themselves up for the postseason. So check it out, man. Stone, we appreciate your time today. Wish you nothing but the best of luck. If you need anything, man, holler at us.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. That is Stone Simmons, everybody. If you like hearing his story or you just like hearing us average Joes talk X's and O's, please like and share the podcast on Facebook, retweet us on Twitter, listen, subscribe on Spotify, YouTube, all the different things. We have audio, we have video, we have it all. I'll be back later tonight with Daniel. We're going to have Maximus Martin from Kansas State on. But remember, in the meantime, strong body, sharp minds, grit and grind all the time. We are out.